this content is for kids.
It's not for kids.
Isn't that what I said?
No, it's not for kids. If you are 13 years or younger, this is not for you. Do I have to kill somebody in order to actually make that point across?
No, man, you don't have to kill
Wait
no
a
one.
second.
No.
We return to our planet. The High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. I'd buy that for $1.
Greetings! You're watching SeptumSin versus the world. I'm SeptumSin. This is Kotobukijake.
Hi, or listening to it rather.
And we're here with another vlogcast. I just decided to start making these what we watched into vlogcast, because that's what they are. They're podcasts, essentially.
Right.
Not much visual needed.
Wasn't the V in Vlogcast visual?
Hey, they see a picture.
Okay.
So, if they want, they can stare at the same picture the whole time.
Mhm.
If this was my full-time job, I'd edit in stuff so that people could see, like, frames from the movies and stuff that we talk about. But
Right.
that actually would take effort that I don't want to expend with a 40-hour-a-week job. So, let's get started with, I guess, the usual, which is the, what was it? The Inside Movies Galore stuff.
Mhm.
Of course, we officially celebrated our 5th anniversary this year.
Mhm.
And we did it with the first 2 feature films that we ever discussed on the channel.
Or 3 rather.
The first one was just a double feature, which turned into a trilogy, which was the Rob Zombie trilogy, which is House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, and 3 from Hell.
Mhm.
I watched all 3 of them. I think Jake only watched, he watched one at the same time I did, which was Devil's Rejects.
Mhm.
And you didn't do too badly with it.
It was definitely better than I expected, or at least easier to watch than I expected, and there was definitely more entertainment than I expected. But I'm still fine not watching the others anytime soon.
Maybe at the 10-year anniversary.
But definitely check in our discussion on that.
Yeah, we had a good discussion, I think.
Mhm.
And then we followed that up with the second film. I told Dave, I guess you guys were just trying to see, you guys kept amping it up. You just started amping it up at too high a level. So, I mean, they have to start doing real snuff films to start amping it up as they got too far. Because the second film they did was Saulo, which, let's just say that I don't plan on watching that again.
And of course I ended up missing it, which
Lucky you.
I guess. I did plan to participate, but things happened, and I may have been fortunate for that.
Well, yeah. That's film that a lot of even our hardened veterans were like, ugh. I mean, Dustin, who normally will watch like the House of a Thousand Corpses stuff, he watches that with ease, was like, no. So yeah, that's the kind of thing it is.
Well, he did loathe Bunny the Killer things, so
That is
he
true.
doesn't always go for that stuff.
So then we celebrated my birthday and Dave's.
Mhm.
For Dave's birthday, we did Attack of the Killer Donuts,
Mhm.
which was a much better film than Saulo, in my opinion. And we did Windwalker,
Mhm.
which was better than Saulo, but that's not saying anything.
Oh, it was. It was a decent movie, but it was like, I think he's been kind of holding Gosford Park grudge for a few months, and this was his way of.
Well, it definitely had a slow vibe to it,
Yes.
but I think it was more on his nostalgia.
Yeah.
Now, then we ended it with the first two Puella Magica Magica movies,
Mm-hmm.
which covers our anticlimax
Yes.
pick, which you
Uh,
can go.
Our anime for the month was Puella Magi Madoka Magica, as he said. And then we did Beginnings and Eternal, which together are the theatrical cut of the series. And we had a long and rambling discussion across 2 nights, basically. So
Basically the
check
same
those
people.
out. Yeah,
For
mostly.
the most part.
Brittany couldn't make the second one, but otherwise we had the same.
Really and truly, if you want a long, in-depth discussion, just
Mhm.
back-to-back those two.
Hmm. And also earlier in the month, we checked out Kiki's delivery service for Mo's channel for the Ghibli discussion that's going on there. So yeah, all those, once again, check those discussions out. And
We gotta just fit only yesterday someplace.
we'll get to it very soon. Hopefully next week, I guess. Yes, it is a classic.
And technically, that same one, we covered Bad Ben the Way In,
Okay. Yeah.
which was pretty fun.
Okay.
We've been enjoying our Bad Ben discussions, and
Mm-hmm.
we're getting close to the end.
Hmm.
Oh.
What happened?
Stop shaking the table.
Oh, sorry.
But the Bad Ben discussions were fun. They're always fun. I'm hoping to get the 10th film is really on the edge of release because they're doing like preview parties and stuff for that.
Mm.
So that should be well available by the time we start running out of Bad Ben material in October.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? And he usually releases another one around that time. So who knows? Maybe we'll have all 12 months. Even if not, we're going to divide the short films up into November and December, and we'll have them all. We'll have the entire year covered for Bad Ben.
Mm.
So I guess let's go ahead and start with you for viewing. For once, you have more than me,
I know.
and you had two that you said you could do back to back.
No, if you want me to, I can do that. So as I've mentioned before, I tend to have difficulty getting hold of viewing time for myself, and that has led to some pretty light months, like last month. Well, May. Yeah, May. That being very busy with other things too. But June, for various reasons, I had a little bit more time to use, and I also was more aggressive about letting people know that I need to get some viewing done. And I was working really hard to get viewing done for the 2022 Versus Awards for the year 2021. So I got a lot of stuff done for that. And so the first two on my list, and this may not be a full list, I've added like 4 here since I sat down that I remember, wait a minute, that's not on my list. So hopefully I got them all. But the first two I'm going to kick off with are two very, very different films that both were films that kind of flew under. One flew right under the radar. I didn't even know about it until like a couple months before I saw it. And the other one had been a critically acclaimed film that still was largely under the radar. Lady of the Manor was an interesting sort of a stoner comedy kind of movie. Features Melanie Linsky as a adult who never really fully grew up, who just gets stoned and runs deliveries of certain substances. And ends up taking a job as a. Basically, she ends up meeting this really skeevy guy, who's played by Ryan Felipe, who his family has a local historical house, a historical home. I don't remember the name offhand, but and his father is a politician played by Patrick Duffy in one of the more amusing cameos of the year. Basically, he wants someone to do reenactments in the house who will also be amenable to doing other things for him. And she needs a job, and so she takes the job and ends up finding herself haunted by the ghost of the woman she's reenacting, who's played by Judy Greer. There's also a local historian who's played by Justin Long, who actually co-directed the film with his brother, and I believe it was his feature debut as a director. So it's a fun little movie. Not high art, but the kind of art that you could enjoy when you're high.
Yeah,
And,
I imagine.
and I enjoyed it reasonably enough regardless. And then on a very different note, there was a movie that actually is a contender for low budget feature. It's a film called Mass. And it's a very simple, straightforward, difficult film to watch. I have no doubt that it might be, depending on your mindset, every bit as difficult to watch as Salo, but for very, very different reasons. And I did get through it. But it's about two couples, and one is played by Martha Plimpton and Jason Isaacs, and one is played by Ann Dowd and I'm drawing a blank on the other dude, unfortunately. But basically, they are two sets of parents connected by a mass shooting. And one set of parents actually is the parents of the shooter, and one set is the parents of one of the victims. And they decide a few years later to sit down and talk it out. And that's pretty much what the movie is about. And it's really good, but really hard to watch. And freakishly timely, unfortunately. But apparently the film was made for under $400K, so it actually fits our rules for the low budget. So we're going to have one classy film in that category.
Well, we had a classy one last time. What was it? That one that Light and Shadow put up like every time.
Clementine?
Clementine.
Oh, yeah.
It is too bad. So I went ahead and I said I actually ended my my stuff for the Versus Awards because I was putting up stuff as examples. So a lot of my viewing is not Versus Award centric. I decided to go ahead and tackle one of those David Sterling boxes. The Apes box. And the reason why I'm trying to get them all at once, they kind of run into each other, and I don't know which one's which. So I'm going to list them. There's Guerrilla Warfare, Battle of the Apes, Empire of the Apes, Invasion of the Apes, Revolt of the Apes. So, essentially, the story begins, you got this advanced ape culture, this ape empire, and they end up crash landing on this planet and getting stranded with their human slaves. And it all develops from there, essentially. I mean, eventually they move on to another planet, they become the dominant species on that planet, and there's a couple of things that really are about interspecies relations, and the fact that the apes want to do it with the women, with the human women, regardless of where it is, without getting to the porn level. They're all directed by Mark Polonia, who is a so-so low-budget director. Some people really love Polonia, and his name is going to appear again on this with a little bit more love. I found the ape movies amusing, and it's certainly not nearly the worst film I watched this year. Matter of fact, I could say that one of the films I've watched this month would make probably my bottom 10 of least liked films of all time. So, but these didn't come anywhere close. So they're pretty fun. If you like something amusing like that, you like people in a bunch of ape costumes running around chasing women, I think that's probably that's your thing. I say go for it.
Okay.
And that is that.
All right. So on the far end of the other side of the multiverse of budgetary matters, I went to go to the theater to see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is pretty darn good. I very much enjoyed it. Sam Raimi directs, and so this marked his official entry into the MCU. And there's definitely some of those little Sam Raimi touches that you would expect. And I personally, I don't want to give too much away for those who haven't seen it, but it had some very good cameos, and I personally thought a really, really good antagonist. I really enjoyed how they handled that particular character in this movie. It's not the best MCU film I've seen. It is the best one I've seen so far for 2022. But it's and probably the second best overall I've seen for 2022 so far out of the whopping 5. But it's a really good movie. It's a lot of fun. Brings back a lot of the good parts from the original Doctor Strange. Before this one, I made a point to watch WandaVision, and I'm very glad that I did, because you kind of have to for this one. As well as Spider-Man No Way Home and probably Loki. Those are and the original Doc Strange. So we are getting to that point where it's like you have to watch certain things before you go into these movies. But you know, small price to pay.
Well, since we're talking about it, I also watched that film.
Okay.
And I did find that there were a lot of similarities to Far From Home or No Way Home.
No Way Home.
It was very similar to that, and yes, watching, I would say your best bet is watch No Way Home, watch WandaVision, and you're for the most part okay. But, you're best off if you've just watched everything, which would suck if they're good, quality-wise, but...
Actually, even the What If episode, What If Doctor Strange had lost his heart instead of his hands, would also be a potential important one for this. But
yep, that one does play in, and you get to see that character again, which was kind of interesting. So, that's all I have to say about that. Back to you.
Oh, you want me to do another one? I can do that.
Yep.
I actually ended up watching another 2022 release purely by happenstance, but I'm actually rather glad I did. Disney dropped a film straight on Disney Plus that I had not even heard about until they released it, and then I was like, oh, I got to see this. And that was their movie of Chippendale Rescue Rangers, which for anyone who was a child, technically a child of the 80s or early 90s, I suppose, anyone who was old enough to remember Rescue Rangers when it was on TV, as such a huge bit of nostalgia for me. And the idea that they went back and made a movie about it, at first I was like, I wonder about this. But it got great reviews, and so my brothers wanted to see it, and I was like, guys, you make sure I watch this with you for once. So we did. We all watched it, and we quite enjoyed it. It picks up basically 30... I can't remember if it's 30 or 35 years later. But it does take place, like, after the fact, as they had their brief time in the sun. But now Chip is an insurance salesman, and Dale is one of those people who goes to cons and is stuck in the past and just, lives his glory days over and over again. And he apparently had a procedure done to make him 3D, whereas the other one is still 2D. And this, incidentally, is a film that blends live action and animation. And they find themselves involved in a new mystery. Their boy Monterey Jack goes missing, and it leads them to a shady individual who goes by the name of Sweet Pete. And no, it was not the Pete I expected it to be. I was quite amused with how they did that. And the movie basically checks every animated thing you can think of. It was worse than Titanic: The Legend Goes On in terms of trying to check every possible thing. Randy from South Park shows up in there. You get all these totally random characters. And I'm like, well, I guess it's Disney. They can get away with it. But and they even had Roger Rabbit even shows up in it. So I guess he did get to show up in another Disney movie after all.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But it was actually a lot of fun. And definitely worth checking out. Especially if that was part of your childhood.
Well, I did do one movie that early on for the Versus Awards. Because it was 2021, so I said I would go ahead and I would get this done early before I posted up the low budget. And that was Horror Tales 666 Part 2. We talked about the first one and my last one, and I need to gear up to do that because this month is when the third one releases. I just, it's so rough doing those things. I've got to watch the film like 5 times, and then I got to take notes, and then I got to write a script, and I got to do the script. But it is the next one on my list. And this one is I don't know if Phil Herman actually directed this one, but he's related to it, and so is Joel Wynkoop, which I spent a lot of time with those two on my film cycle analysis. With the 3 Craiglons, and now these 2, and probably the third of this series. Oh my. But Horror Tales .666 is a horror anthology. Our cat burglar comes to life again and is forced to read horror stories yet again. I like this one better than the old one. I think they did a much better job with it, but it doesn't quite have that campy feel that the old one had. So again, pretty good overall. I think that it fit pretty well.
Cool.
And
All right.
that's about it.
So back to the 2021 releases, getting ready for the Versus Awards.
Hey, I had one. That was a 2021 release.
Well, I mean, for me, back to them. Okay, whatever. Or shall I say, continuing into that.
There you go.
I finally got a chance to watch the documentary Clerk, which is about Kevin Smith, of course. And it was a pretty decently made documentary. I feel like they maybe leaned a little too heavy into the praise for Smith. They probably could have gone a little... Well, it was a little bit of a biased documentary, I guess you could say, if that makes sense.
I like how his daughter's favorite film of his was Yoga Hosers.
Yeah. Well, and she does make a decent interviewee. And most of the people they got made pretty decent interviewees, and they got some interesting ones. But some of them just seem kind of random. Like I don't. I feel like Penn Jillette was kind of a random one, but he still had some fun stuff to say. And one of my favorite things that any of them said, and I actually hope he follows through with this. Brian O'Halloran at one point, who plays Dante in Clerks, the original Clerks, makes the comment that the epitaph on his grave is going to be, I'm not even supposed to be here today. And I'm like, that would be the perfect epitaph.
True enough.
I hope he goes through with that. But overall, it was pretty good. Whether or not you like Kevin Smith's work, you might find it an interesting documentary. I was intrigued that Stan Lee was actually in it, which means it showed that clearly they were working on it for some time, because he's been dead 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
But still, that was pretty cool, and it was a good movie. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was watching I watched that Woody Allen interview with Alec Baldwin, and he was talking about his relationship with Groucho Marx, and I thought to myself, that's in a way a lot like how Kevin Smith had a relationship with Stan Lee, because Woody Allen had idolized Groucho for so long, and then they became good friends. And the same thing for this, they actually became pretty good friends at the end of it all, which was neat.
Pretty cool.
Sometimes you can meet your heroes and have a good outcome.
Right. Yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
So I did some anime viewing.
Aha.
One of them was a series called Tonikawa, Over the Moon for You.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar.
I've heard of it.
So it's about this guy. He's just this excellent student. He gets PO'd because his parents were hippies, so they decided to name him actually not hippies. They were just like really like space nuts, so they named him NASA. So he got so PO'd about people making fun of it, so he's like, I have to excel in order to do it. So he works super hard at everything. He's like, no, I only need my first choice. I was like, don't you need a backup? No, I only need my first choice. So he's getting into high school, and then he sees this beautiful girl. Then he staggers into the middle of the road and gets run over by a bus.
Huh.
But she saves his life for the most part. He still gets pretty badly hurt. And he gets obsessed with her. He tracks her down and says, I want to date you. And she's like, well, you can date me, but only if you agree to marry me first.
As you do.
And they get married. And the rest of the series is about them kind of adapting to married life together. It is interesting because it shows the kind of the relationship deepening as time goes. I kind of feel bad for him because he basically stalls his entire life. Instead of going to university, he just works at a convenience store. But still, I mean, it's interesting. And I'm hoping for a season 2. I hope that we get one. It'll be cool to see that story continue.
Is that a current one? Or is that...
Yeah, it's on the Crunchyroll right now.
Cool. All right. The next one up is one that I had some difficulty with, but it was interesting. I'm talking about people stalling their lives and that sort of thing. So another 2021 release, a potential versus award contender that actually also, once again, a low-budget feature contender. This one barely makes the cut. I read multiple reports that it had a budget of $1 million, so it's right at the limit we set. But it's a movie called Red Rocket, and I mentioned on our talk about Attack of the Killer Donuts how it was interesting that I watched 2 movies in 2 weeks about people and donut shops, and that's a very strange coincidence. But basically, in the Red Rocket has a poster of this dude who's wearing only an oversized donut, which is a very interesting poster. That was actually a contender for poster design. But so this dude who used to live in Texas, in Nowheresville, Podunk, Texas, went out to California with his girlfriend at the time because they were going to be porn stars. And they were very successful porn stars for a few years until drugs caused her to hit the skids and go back home. And he basically kind of drifted from one less than successful venture to another. And the movie starts with him coming back home to Texas, broke, desperate, and planning to crash with the girlfriend and her, well, ex-wife rather, and her mother. And he wheedles and wheedles and wheedles his way until he finally gets to stay. And before long, this guy who's already proven himself a pathological liar and just generally untrustworthy is macking on this really gorgeous but really young donut shop employee. And the rest of and he's hanging out with the next door neighbor who used to be babysat by the ex-wife and now still has a thing for her, but he's basically fried his brain on drugs and he goes around just kind of drifting through life. And so it's a movie about people their life has passed by. It's very well made. It's well acted. I really enjoyed certain aspects of it. But the main character, this would be one of those movies you like to talk about where you just don't like the character and it.
Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one, but yeah. And I'll go ahead. I guess I'll go ahead and do another one.
Go for it.
On a very different film, there was another 2021 release, which is a very viable contender in a couple categories. There was a film that was actually the directorial debut for Rebecca Hall, which, and I was kind of surprised by her choice for a film until I realized I never knew that Rebecca Hall was part black. She does not look it. And that's part of the thing, I guess, why she decided to do this. She did a movie called Passing, which stars Tessa Thompson and Ruth Negga as two former schoolmates who meet by chance, and Negga kind of works her way back into the other one's life back in the 20s or 30s, like back in the day. And Negga's character is straight up passing for white. And you actually come to find out that she has to. Her husband is, so it's a very interesting movie. Great acting. Both of them did phenomenal jobs. And I want to say it was Alexander Skarsgård. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. The husband. But he did a good job. Very well done. Shot in black and white. And I don't know what it was last year, but there's at least 4 major releases that were shot in black and white. It's kind of interesting how they did that. And Passing, the camera work was absolutely gorgeous. Just absolutely gorgeous. And overall, like I said, it was a good movie. Got a lot of critical buzz, but it ended up getting passed over by Oscar and, I imagine, by most of the people in our academy. But anyway. Did you end up seeing that one?
Which one was it again?
Passing?
No.
Hey, you ought to check it out. It's good times.
So,
go for it.
Let's see here. So, I'm prepping for my 2022, I guess, because I saw another Polonia film.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is called Sharkula.
Huh.
Now, Sharkula doesn't star, but pretty much is a very much supporting actor for Kyle Rappaport, as he plays the what's the guy who assists Dracula?
Renfield.
Yeah, he's Renfield. So Apparently, Dracula gets pushed off of a ledge and nearly gets eaten by a shark, so the shark becomes a vampire lord. And now Dracula has to serve the shark by making sacrifices to it. But he's trying to break free. And Kyle is, of course, Renfield to Dracula and Dracula Shark.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually pretty entertaining. It was very enjoyable. I enjoyed watching it. Out of the low-budget films this month, I'd say that one and Horror Tales 666 are my top two.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely leagues over the Apes movies. And it drags a little bit, but not as much as some Polonia films have in the past. Kyle does pretty good with the performance. I always thought Kyle would be able to do a good Renfield, and he did. And so good on that, Kyle. Right now, you're probably making my list of supported actors. I don't know if it's going to stay, but for now, at least, you are on there.
Mm-hmm.
So, you better get involved in the nomination process next year, and maybe you can get your name on there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, and that's it for Sharkula.
Okay. Back to me?
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to do two together because they're short films. The first one, actually, I've now seen twice, but this was my first time hitting it, was in June. I went ahead and watched the animated short that he had recommended to me called Gaslight. And that was probably the shortest 2021 film I saw. It's less than 4 minutes long. And it is a fun little movie. It is fun. It's very simple, straightforward, about a convenience store employee who sneaks out to be with his lover, which turns out is his lighter and his and cigarette. And then, but he decides after a couple puffs to announce that he is going to stop smoking. And we come to find out that his flame, if you will, is not going to go quietly into the night. And we'll leave it at that. But that is a fun one. You can find it on YouTube. It's like I said, 4 minutes long. It's worth looking up. The other one, I can't remember. I think I found the New Yorker page on YouTube. I think that's what it was. I was looking for live action shorts, and I found a good one. It's called Amber. And it's a little bit longer. I think it was around 18 to 20 minutes-ish. And it has very little dialogue, and if I remember correctly, some, if not all of it, might have been in Arabic. Definitely, it looked like the guy. I mean, it's a Middle Eastern guy who runs a hair salon, barbershop salon, what have you. And a guy comes in for a cut and a shave. And as he's getting the guy prepped and ready, he realizes that this guy is wanted for abducting a child. And he gets very, 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 very tense. And I'll leave it at that. You gotta watch it and find out what happens. But anyway, it's a good movie, and both of those were definitely fun little finds that I was able to get a little closer to getting my. I actually got a decent number of shorts this year, so it's pretty cool.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we actually started off with another group. Well, I did, where Mo and I and Cody, who is one of our friends from filmmaking here, have gotten together to do a podcast called Schlockaholics. And it is a podcast dedicated to essentially discussing B movies.
Mm-hmm.
And we do a good job of, well, we haven't done a great job because we only had one episode, but we're working on it. And so our first episode was on the film Axe Grinder, which was still to this day a great film. I really enjoyed Axe Grinder the first time I watched it, which wasn't that long ago, and then I watched it again for this. And it really does get the feel of those old Camp Blood movies, the old Brad Sykes ones, where you've got, of course, the guy in the clown mask going and killing everybody who invades his territory. But there's sort of a Jason Undead type thing going on with that as well. I really enjoyed it that time around. If you haven't watched the Schlockaholics podcast, you should. Right now, I think it's on Mo's channel, which is what is his channel name again?
It's Retro Cold Home
Retro
Video.
Cold Home Video, yes. And that might be that's where it is for now. But we're going to have our own channel in the near future, so look forward to that.
Good deal. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do two of them definitely go together as one, but I'll go ahead and lump two together because they have one common theme and nothing else whatsoever in common. Well, two common themes. Once again, we're looking at 2021 releases, potential versus award contenders, and these were all potential contenders in the film not in an English language category. I did watch the two Sailor Moon Eternal films, parts 1 and 2. Sailor Moon, of course, well, you know Sailor Moon. If you don't, it's kind of the template for the Magical Girl series to most people, I guess you could say. And Eternal parts 1 and 2 are the crystal equivalent to the original Sailor Moon Super S, I think it is. Which is the Dead Moon Circus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they handled the story well in that that basic 2-episode format.
I certainly was more entertained by this than I was by the first season of Crystal. But they fixed some of the art issues that they had in that series.
Yeah.
I think the art overall was actually pretty good. And it's a very... They were pretty well made movies, but they really are one movie. It's just two parts of the whole. Although movie 2 to the uninitiated, like me, because I think I got as far as R in the actual series. It's kind of weird how it starts off with the outer Senshi, the outer planet Senshi, because they have no part whatsoever in the first half, and so it's kind of weird that But anyway, the next one, something completely different. An Italian film by Paolo Sorrentino called The Hand of God, which was loosely based on an experience from his childhood. Apparently, if I remember correctly, much of it actually was based on the childhood. It was just kind of dramatized and whatever. He did meet Federico Fellini as a child, and there were a couple of other things that were But Paolo Sorrentino, I think, is one of the best and most exciting directors in Italy right now. And this may not be his best film, but it was a really good one, and I enjoyed it. And his frequent collaborator, Tony Servillo, has a fun role to play as the main character's father. Tragically cut short. Actually, the real guy, his parents actually did die of carbon monoxide poisoning, so that's got to be a horrifying thing for most kids. But yeah.
Actually, when I think about that, something else that hit my wallet was that the Kino Lorber sale that's there.
Oh, I didn't even know that was going on.
A lot of good prices there. Which
Sentai got me though. There's a lot. There's some rock bottom prices right now.
Got me a little as well because there's some things that are on the Right Stuff sale that are. If you see a Sentai item on Right Stuff that's on sale,
check Sentai.
99% of the time it's going to be cheaper when Sentai puts them on sale.
But when it's not, you never know.
Yep.
But anyway, so that that wrapped it up. Those were the foreign films there.
Well, so I watched another of my. Eventually, I'm going to do a program where, and I might bring you on or somebody else on for it, maybe even the whole D&D group, where I'm talking about gaming films, RPG gaming. And I have quite a number of them. And I watched another one the other day called Geekin. Geekin apostrophe. And it's interesting. Essentially, you have this guy who, this gaming group, they do their thing, and they enjoy it. One of the gamers is kind of your Mark character. He's a fairly popular guy, and he's got a party going on. And so the other guy, he got this girl that he's met with online, and they're finally meeting, and they're dating, and they're doing well. So he brings them to meet the gaming group, and then she just goes out with the popular guy like right off the bat and just drops him like a stone. He ends up using a friend and former girlfriend of the popular guy, and then drops her like a rock because he had no interest in dating her, so hurts her feelings. It's a very weird, complex web of romance that you don't usually see in the gaming community. But on top of that, it had a lot of relations. It reminds me a little bit of Fellowship of the Dice because it shows some of the darker aspects of relationships when it comes to gaming. But it also, it's not quite as bad as that, and it's not as tough to watch. I enjoyed it. It's not as fun as the one I talked about, I think, last month, the Icelandic one, which that one still to this day is definitely one of the highlights of gaming films.
Cool.
But you should check it out if you haven't. It's these are films that should be checked out.
Cool.
That's.
Okay. I guess I'll probably do another pair. Once again, films with the 2021. Again, there were a lot. I did some hardcore catching up at the end. Two very different films I'm going to mention. The first of all is a film by Pablo Larraín called Spencer, which was a film about a particular weekend in the life of the British royal family, and particularly the life of Princess Diana of Wales. Diana is played in the film by Kristen Stewart, and actually I believe got an Oscar nod for doing so. She did a good job, and overall the film features pretty phenomenal production value, wonderful hair and makeup, costume. Johnny Greenwood does the score, and it's a really good score. Timothy Spall has a great supporting role. Overall, I liked it infinitely better than the other Pablo Larraín biopic I saw, which was Jackie. I did not. Jackie was such a tedious friggin' film. Spencer was actually quite watchable and even enjoyable at times, and well worth a look. And then a very different film, but also a contender potentially for actress. I went and I finally got around to watching Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar. Very interesting film, co-written and starring Kristen Wiig and Annie Mumolo, about two middle-aged spinsters who are best friends, who are constantly hanging out and talking, even at work. And then when they find out that their company kind of went under and didn't bother to tell anyone, they decide reluctantly to go on vacation. So they go to Vista Del Mar, Florida, where they end up hooking up with this guy named played by Jamie Dornan, that they both are instantly smitten with, and he is there for nefarious means for a shadowy individual who's also played by Kristen Wiig. It's a fun movie. It's a weird movie. You got a crab who does a perfect impersonation of Morgan Freeman. It's a fun movie. I was surprised. I was not as surprised as I could have been because a lot of critics actually raved about the movie, but I still was impressed.
Yeah. That movie was much better than it had any right to be.
Yes.
So I actually beat a video game, or at least the main part of a video game. I'm working on the DLC now, but I don't really count that. I finally beat Alan Wake, which is a pretty cool game. It's a survival horror game, pretty old. I beat the remastered version. Essentially, this guy, he's a writer, a la Stephen King, Dean Koontz, those types. And he's got writer's block, so he's traveling to this place, and he gets wrapped up in this particular issue where there's this magical volcano, essentially, that is crater that a lake has gone into, an ancient volcano. And apparently whatever you write can come to life. So a lot of this is he's fighting this darkness that was created by a previous writer, and the darkness is making him try and write it into a greater power by taking his wife. To kill monsters, you have to get rid of the shield of darkness on the monster, and then you blow them away. And it's pretty interesting. The DLC is a lot more fighting oriented, but it's a little bit of a mind twist. It's a pretty good game. I enjoy it. I look forward to finishing the DLC and being done with it, though, so I can move on to something else. But it was still fun overall. I still enjoyed it.
Very good. So next up, continuing on with the 2021 theme, I finally got to watch the movie King Richard, which centers on the Williams family, Richard Williams and his wife Oracene, and their two famous daughters, Venus and Serena. And of course, this movie will probably have its legacy somewhat tarred by the shenanigans that Will Smith got up to at the Oscars. He finally won his Oscar. Could have gone a lot more smoothly than it did. But I will say he did do a solid job in this movie. He gave a very good performance. He portrays Richard Williams as a father who's driven to succeed, but he also is portrayed as someone who actually cares about his family and wants to keep them from pushing themselves too hard. And they take on a couple of coaches during the course of the film. The first one seems to be pushing the girls to just keep doing juniors tournaments for many years, and Williams isn't about that. So he hooks up with this other guy who's played by John Bernthal, Rick Macy, I think was his name, and somehow coerces Macy into letting the girls train pretty much free of charge at a world-class outfit without doing the tournaments. And of course, eventually it gets to be too much for them, and they decide they want to compete, etc., etc. I'll leave it at that. But it's actually a really good, enjoyable movie. Good music, good solid performances all around. And like I said, it's just just a shame that that there was some little tinges of controversy around the edges for that one. And then I'll go with this because it's kind of related. A documentary I checked out is called Try Harder. It's a documentary that follows several students, mostly seniors, one is a junior, through a single year at a school in California. I'm blanking on the name of the school, but it's a well-known school that apparently a lot of colleges look down on because they think it's a factory for, like people who do grades and nothing else. And it's also a school that happens to be a very, 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 very high percentage Asian, which feeds into that stereotype even more. And a couple of the people that they follow are indeed Asians, but it's more diverse than that.
Yeah.
And it's actually a pretty good documentary. I thought it was really good. It showed a lot of the pressures that high schoolers are under, and it showed a lot of the current state of college admissions and all that kind of stuff. It was a pretty good movie. Yeah.
So I saw a documentary myself. It was a 2019 one called Remastered: Devil at the Crossroads. Just barely hit the feature length because it was 49 minutes. And it's about the artist that you've heard the story about, the guy at the crossroads, devil, sells his soul to the
Robert
devil.
Dawson.
Yeah. So of course, that was his story. And how the rumors got started and how he died. And it was very interesting because the man was traveling through some of the nastiest corners of the South doing his performances, but it wasn't. It was his womanizing and other things that did him in at the end, not the other things that could have done him in. But it was very interesting. You got to hear from a lot of his relatives. You got to see people. I think they had some old interviews with his son before he passed, and that's some pretty cool things. Like he was never, apparently his son was never really allowed to see him. He said the last time he remember seeing his father was that he had come up to the house, and then his mother, like his grandfather, basically came out there and said, "No, you're not coming in here." And so he said, "Well, here, give this there," and put some money in his hands to give to the child, and then left. Said never got to see him. But there's a lot of cool stuff about that, a lot of great music. It's definitely, if you like good blues music and some of the origins of that,
nice.
You should do yourself a favor and watch it. It's not a long one. It's on Netflix.
Okay, I have to keep that in mind. I like I love what I've heard. There's not a lot of his stuff that actually survives. There's probably about an album's worth.
Yeah, it's a wrong record, essentially.
Definitely is some important.
A lot of history there.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people had said, there were two things that got to the rumor. One was that the person who he was this guy who loved to play but never actually could play that good. And then he went away for like 3 or 4 months, and when he came back, he was outperforming all the people on the stage. The other thing is that people would see him practicing because his apparently his mentor liked to practice in the graveyard because you get the best concentration.
Right.
He said, the people, the audience here is not going to boo you if you mess up. And so he would be seen practicing at the graveyard, which of course led to more of that suspicions.
No, they'll boo him in a different way. And of course that he is also the inspiration for Tommy Johnson in my favorite film, Oh Brother Where Art Thou, then they had the film Crossroads when the 80s was there. It's very old too. And Eric Clapton, of course, appropriated much of that for his own stuff. And so that was kind of, it's like I had to be there at that there crosswalk last midnight, sell my soul to the devil.
I'll go ahead and I'll follow it up with one, which I figured is 2 Netflix things. Yeah. This was a short show. It was called The Secret Lives of Pets. No, sorry, not secret. Hidden Lives of Pets. Secret Life of Pets is
that's a little different.
But it shows a lot about like these different animals and what they do with their owners. Like this guy who has a parrot, and what the parrot does is it's attached to him to the point where he's not worried about letting it fly freely, or fry freely if you want to eat it. But And he'll it's just like when there's a stretch of road that's not really used a lot, he'll take the bird, put it up there, and the bird flies alongside the vehicle by his window the rest of the way home because it knows the way home. But it talks about dogs and cats and special instincts and a lot of the stuff that they do. And it's fairly fun. It was a great one. I ended up binging the whole thing with Kim. We were just sitting there watching it. It was a fun night.
Sounds fun. Another one that was quite fun, not as fun as I hoped, but still quite fun, was the newest installment by Matthew Vaughn in his Kingsman series, which is called The King's Man. And it was a prequel to the Kingsman movies. Kind of follows the formation of the organization, with Ray Fine playing a lord and outspoken pacifist, and Charles Dance as one of his mentors, and several other people involved as well. But it's a good movie. It's a lot of fun. Again, not quite as fun as Kingsman, the Secret Service in particular. The Golden Circle was also fun, but it's still a good kind of an historical action drama. Like I said, sets the origin for those. And a film that actually is a little bit older, but is weird because it's a 2021 release after a fashion. A movie that is a contender potentially for the Versus Awards low budget feature category.
Nominations have already ended, so
Yes.
but your voting will be appreciated later on.
Indeed.
So join the community at the link below, and by joining, you will have the right to vote. And votes are coming up shortly because I'm going to be taking away those nomination forms and I'm going to be putting up the voting ones.
And so the film that was put forward by some of our academy is called New York Ninja. And apparently it's a film that actually was filmed back in the 70s in New York and was more or less lost. And as I understand it, Vinegar Syndrome was behind getting it back into production. And they redubbed everything because the audio track, I think, was lost or damaged.
Yeah.
They redubbed everything. So the film does have that kind of cheesy, not quite right look to it. It was actually pretty fun. I've seen a little better, but I enjoyed it.
But do they have the original Japanese?
Oh, yeah. Well, you gotta have that.
So a show that I really do love is Somebody Feed Phil. It's a nice, warm, and just generally feel-good show. And they had their season, and it was pretty good. He went to various places. One of the ones that was really cool was Spain. He went over there, and he had some of their hams and so on. And oh my gosh, the food just is amazing to watch. Just that warmth that show provides. If you haven't seen it, or I'll have what Phil's having, there. I mean, I know my wife tweeted it out of us watching it, and he retweeted, so that was nice as well. So that's there.
Nice.
And for those of you who don't know Phil, he is known best for writing Everybody Loves Raymond, and you can tell that. So it's a good show. If you haven't seen it, you should. I would start with I'll Have What Phil's Having, which unfortunately is no longer on Netflix because it was a BBC show. But it is available on DVD and physical media, whereas Somebody Feed Phil is not. But Somebody Feed Phil is a Netflix show, so you can still watch that. So that's there.
Okay.
Lots of seasons.
Cool. Well, that seems like a good lead-in. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead slightly because that seems like a really good lead-in to one of the other films that I watched to get ready for the Versus Awards, which was a documentary called Roadrunner, a film about Anthony Bourdain.
Glad you got to it.
And I am too. And It's a very interesting movie. I mean, I knew of Anthony Bourdain, and I recognize, like, if I saw him, I would recognize him. I knew, but I had never really watched the shows that he did. I knew he did some of that travel stuff. I knew he was known as an author, but it was really interesting diving a little deeper and finding more about the individual and his career, but also the sort of persona that he built up and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought that it was a good movie. Of course, it does have a tragic ending, and it really gets into some odd. And actually, there was one thing I was meaning to look up, and I just never quite got around to it. But let me just see something real.
It's definitely a contender for the documentary.
Oh yeah, absolutely, he's a contender for that. And I was just curious. Let's see.
You know what's funny? I'll tell you a story where he's looking it up. As I was talking to somebody about it, trying to get some nominations, and I was telling him about that film. It's like, well, it's impossible to do because the person died before 2021, so you can't. That doesn't qualify for a 2021 film if the person it's about died before.
Well, okay. Well, actually, that. So that was what I wanted to confirm. Toward the end, he was dating Asia Argento, and I had not looked it up. But yeah, she is Dario Argento's daughter. I had
you didn't
not.
know that?
I suspected it, but I never got around to looking it up. But of course, that's for the way the movie tells it. Part of the reason. There is one bit of controversy about the film that it fits directly into what you were saying, and it did bug me. It helped keep the movie from rating higher than it did, but I still thought it was so well made. But apparently, a lot of the film is narrated by Anthony Bourdain, to the point where you're like, how is he narrating this? They apparently edited together a lot of his stuff to create the narration, which...
That's a cool effect.
It's phenomenal editing, let's put it that way. The problem is, apparently there were 3 or 4 sequences they could not do that way. So they used an AI program to create his voice for those statements. And a lot of people and they apparently did not get his estate's permission to do it. Yeah, so that's unfortunate. But other than that, it was a well-made film. And I'll just go ahead and use that as a lead-in because I also watched Bob Ross' Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed.
Another person, they died before 2021, so they can't be voted for. So.
Well, and another person who unfortunately, even more so possibly, but certainly similarly, was taken advantage of by some of the
much
people.
Worse.
Yes. And I mean, and you gotta feel bad for his son. His son can't use the name Ross, his own name, because of the association there. It's stupid. But yeah, that was a good doc too, and I'm glad I finally got to see it. And it did make me a little upset, but it also does help. I was more familiar with Bob Ross. I'd seen some episodes of Joy of Painting. I actually have a couple of the DVDs. I need to get around to watching them, but it's fun.
I don't buy a lot of Bob Ross stuff just simply because.
Well, now that I know, now that I know about that, if I hear that the son finally gets the rights back, I'll be all about some of that stuff.
I know he's fighting it.
Yeah.
So that's part of the film. It's an important one. I don't know whether it made the nomination cut. Right. Jake is the only one who has the list right now.
Right.
But I'll have it shortly, and then you'll be seeing some voting up soon.
Yeah.
So for me, the next one here is where is it? When They Cry, Go.
Oh.
So This is kind of half the story.
Mm-hmm.
They split the story into 2 parts.
Mm-hmm.
Second part hasn't aired yet.
Hmm.
Even though they split that part into 2 parts with a DVD and Blu-ray release.
Hmm.
And When They Cry is a story about a lot of cyclical events. And there's part of it that is very intriguing. The second half of it is extremely intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
The first half of it is just retelling a lot of the old stories, but with a slight twist at the end.
Hmm.
And to me, it's extremely tedious. Because, well, I've been through these, and you're doing it beat for beat, except for the very end. So that did bother me. But once they finally get into the story,
Mm-hmm.
and you find out how Rika is again trapped in this cycle,
Mm-hmm.
it gets pretty good. And I really want to know what happens now,
Hmm.
and how, if possible, she's able to break the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Because it also deals with, what's the little blonde girl's name? I cannot think. Sadako? Sadako? Is that right?
Sonic? It's been so long. I think so.
And her relationship with Rika.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to see Rika and her grown up-ish in their teens, and you get to see the rest of the group growing up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of interesting. It does fall into it. You just got to get through like the first, like, I'd say 8 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and then it starts really getting good after that. The problem is it takes almost that long.
Yeah.
If you've seen the series before, you're going to be like, oh god, again.
Okay.
Unless you really want to, unless you want that slow pace. Some people like it.
Cool.
So it's a mixed bag, but I'm looking forward to the next part.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, next up, return to the theaters for a movie I wasn't expecting to go to the theaters for. Not in the slightest. But one of the reasons why I get as little viewing as I do is because my brothers like to just hang out, smoke, and watch certain shows over and over and over and over again. And one of the ones that they love, that they are just really love to sit and watch, is Bob's Burgers. And Bob's Burgers is a fun show.
It is a fun
I
show.
will grant it that. It is a fun show. I don't much care for the character designs in the show. They're kind of creepy. Although it is really funny. Gene, the son, I swear, and you can tell me if you think this is crazy or not, but the shadowy big bad who seems to be at the center of all the government conspiracy in X-Files, I realized about a month and a half ago, reminded me so much of Gene, it's not even funny. Like physically, they look like each other. It's weird. But anyway, so in the movie, Bob's Burgers is getting ready to go into summer, and they're looking forward to nice summer business for them. But they're also looking at the bank breathing down their necks because they apparently are behind on the rent.
As always.
As always. And a giant sinkhole opens up directly in front of the store so that people cannot enter the store.
Par for the course with Bob's Burgers.
Yes. And a body is discovered in said sinkhole. And so one of their landlord is a Calvin fish odor, I think it is.
Something like that. Fish something.
The
Fish
name is
Finder.
Fish Odor.
Yeah,
Fish
okay.
Odor. I think it's Calvin and I can't remember the brother's name.
Yeah.
And then there's a cousin who's I don't remember if he's in the show, but he's in the movie. But their landlord is, I believe, arrested for suspicion of murder because of this body being found on the property. And they were getting ready to ask him if he would give them a break on the rent. So that didn't work out for them. And so the kids, of course, decide to solve the mystery and, who the body belonged to and all that kind of stuff. And meanwhile, they're trying to they suspect the other brother, and, things go from
Yeah, it's
there.
Calvin.
Yeah, and the other brother is what? Yeah. The other one is the one played by Zach Galifianakis. Calvin's played by Kevin Kline. And I love that Kevin Kline and Zach Galifianakis are
Felix.
Felix, yes. They're interesting characters. But it was a really fun movie. It was very well written. It was funny. It looked a lot better than the show does, but you'd expect that, honestly. But it's... I ended up seeing it there. I'm not going to go into too many details, but needless to say, one of my brothers really, really, really needed a pick-me-up. So the three of us went to go see that. And so I think it was good. It was a good...
I've heard it's a fun movie.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot of fun. Go ahead.
So, I've got 3 left.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where you're standing at.
Well, I'm getting ready to do several together, so...
So, I'm going to save that one for the end.
Okay.
So, we talked about Puella Magi Magica. I watched the third film just because.
Mm-hmm.
The third film is a drug trip. I showed the cake song. I shared that with the group, and essentially it's got it follows the events after the series, and essentially follows our time traveler. Spoilers. As the main character here.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very imaginative one. I remember one of the comments you had made is, well, this is a studio that that tends to let the art overpower the story, but it doesn't do it as much here. It does it here. Mm-hmm. The art definitely hits you upside the head with the various designs and what it is in the end. When you get to the end, what's going on, you realize, the art overpowering is appropriate. And it is a very good movie, very solid one.
Mm-hmm.
I may end up having to get that American set
Okay.
to get the English dub,
Okay.
but it's a good one.
I'm still hoping some Aniplex ends up on the current Right Stuff sale, but I don't know.
There was
yet.
a little bit on the 4th of July sale one day, but nothing big.
Yeah.
Some actually, what was that one that you like? The one about the orphans. The one about the Neverland. Promise
Neverland?
Promise Neverland season 2 was on it.
Season 2 was on there?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know they got a release.
Yeah, there was a season 2 release.
Oh, geez. So let me guess. It's like $100.
116, I think.
From what I've heard, that's about 110 more than it's worth.
Yeah.
But
But
first season kicked ass, but I have heard the second season is ass. But we'll get to it eventually. So I'm going to do 5 together because they're all short films. I had the day after we did the Bob's Burgers. Well, the last weekend of the month, I was trying to get a ton of stuff in, but I wasn't able to devote as much time as I wanted to. But I got a lot of short films. And the first couple I'm going to do were documentaries. I also had 2 live-action shorts. No, wait. Yeah, 2 live-action shorts and an animated short.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start with the animated one because it was real short, simple, but yet kind of deep. It was called Namu. And I can't remember its origin. I want to say Korea, maybe.
Huh.
But it starts with a baby and some knickknacks and stuff around it. And then a tree starts growing.
Okay.
And you go through the character's life, and things are going on involving the tree. And I'm not going to say much more than that. There's really not a lot to say. It's a very artsy film, but it was really nice. I really liked it a lot, and very neat little movie. And I can't remember where I found it, to be honest. I really can't remember. I feel like Most of these were on Netflix, maybe, but at least one of them was on HBO Max, and maybe one or two were I can't remember. The one that I know was on HBO Max because I could not watch it before was the one that you kept raving about, which was When We Were Bullies.
Yep.
Which is one about a gentleman who is made a film, and someone reached out to him saying, "Oh, I remember that," and it got him thinking about basically a particular event that happened in the 5th grade. It's an interesting movie. It involves the idea of what really constitutes bullying. What point is it when kids stop being kids and start being bullies?
Yeah.
It brings a lot of questions to mind, like what people will hold through the years, what they let go, what they forget about. It, to my mind, was borderline exploitive and flawed in its structure. I didn't love it as much as you did, I think, because of that. But I did mostly think it was well made. I was entertained by it. It was an interesting documentary.
I love the art style too, where they utilize the pictures and so
yeah,
on.
yeah. Using the yearbook pictures and everything was really cool. And then the other documentary, which I know was a Netflix one, is one that I actually think my brother would really enjoy because it's right up his alley. It was one of the ones that was on the short list for Oscar but didn't get a nod. It's called Camp Confidential, America's Secret Nazis. And it's about a very poorly known chapter in American history where, against all common sense, German and Austrian expatriates, mostly Jews, who had joined the army, were put in charge of a camp where Nazis were being kept as, quote, prisoners, but really it was almost more of a summer camp. And they were picked because of their ability to translate and that sort of thing. But what's his face? The famed Nazi scientist, Werner von Braun, I think his name is, was one of the camp attendees. And I watched that thing and I was like, wow. Just wow. But it was a well-made documentary, and again, like I said, I think that would be one that a lot of people could get behind watching. And then I saw 2 live-action shorts. One was called Stenofonen, and if I remember correctly, I think it's a Danish film. And it features this young man who's very musically inclined, whose father is unsupportive, to put it kindly. And he ends up creating an instrument out of different sized stones he finds at the beach. And it's kind of like a xylophone type thing, but just stones. And years later, I think it's his grandson, comes across the instrument and they have a little conversation about it. And it was a neat little movie. It was a lot of fun. And then one that was really good and hard to watch is called, and I'm probably going to butcher the translation or to the language here, Lakuchon Yanga, which translates When the Sun Sets. And it's about a young lady in apartheid Africa in the 80s who works as a nurse and has 2 younger siblings. And her brother is very active in the student protests. And it follows a couple of particular days where she has reason to believe that he has finally gone one step too far. It's a very good short, very effective, worth watching.
So, I have 2 more.
Okay.
Alice in Borderland. I've been trying to watch a few of these before I do my big Alice in Wonderland collection video with Dane later on in the month. We're going to try and get one of those out because I want it to debut shortly before his August in Wonderland as a way of advertising for it.
Mm-hmm.
He's on board.
Mm-hmm.
Be good to talk with Dane again.
Mm-hmm.
So Alice in Borderland is an anime adaptation of a Korean. Actually, I don't know if it might be a Japanese manga, but they did a Korean live action version that's gotten more word of mouth. And this is a 3-parter. And it's very much a Squid Game-esque, this whole idea of people captured and forced to play games for deadly games in order to appease some sort of over audience. I mean, these people are all just sitting there going, I'm bored with the world as it is and all this, and they end up waking up, and then it seems like all of civilization has been destroyed, or like it's all just vacant, like nobody's there, nobody's in places, the convenience stores are empty, like life just ended, and then they end up being called to play these games that have deadly consequences. And where this one ends, it makes you really want to go further. I looked at the manga for a bit, but it takes a long time to get to where they were in the 3rd episode. And I'm just like, I don't know if I want to go through all that because I already know where it ends, where it ends up there, and I don't want to get attached to anybody. It's interesting. I understand why the hype is there, and I do want to see more. I hope they do more in the anime, or maybe more in the live action. But I do want to see what's behind it and where it goes from here.
Cool. Speaking of manga, and actually you mentioned the actual franchise just a few moments ago. I want to go ahead and mention that I finished another manga during the course of the month, which was The Promised Neverland. I did finally finish it. Our library, for whatever reason, basically bought about 8 or 9, it was about 8 volumes of the manga at once, all the way up to volume 19, which is the penultimate volume. And I had to wait about 5 months to read the final volume. Might have been longer than that. So the first roughly 6 or 7 volumes of the manga, if that, corresponds to the first season of the anime. And from what I understand, they tried to cram the rest of it into the second season, which is part of the reason why people didn't care for it as much. And also, to be honest, with the way the manga ends, I could see, I don't know for sure because I haven't talked to anyone who's done both. I don't know if they cut out too much of what made the ending palatable, and that's why people don't like the anime, or if they just went in a different direction and people don't like the direction it went. I don't know for sure. But anyway, I'm just going to mention that as an aside because it is a feeling of achievement anytime you finish something like that, and because it is worth mention. But I've got 2 more myself for the movies if I pair them, so let's do that. I did knock out 2 more low-budget features from 2021, which right at the end of the month, I managed to lock into place my last needed nominee. I would have liked to have had more low-budget contenders. I would have liked to have had more contenders for documentary short. A couple categories I could have done better. And I ended on such a high note with Stephen Kang's Sharks of the Corn. But, well, it was interesting. It clearly blithely ripped off both Jaws and Children of the Corn, and probably a lot of other stuff along the way. And it was interesting, but, I was forced to watch it on my... let's just say I was forced to watch it under less than ideal circumstances, so I had trouble staying awake. But what I saw was enjoyable enough. Very weak. And honestly, it was enough for me to put Death Toll at 4 on the number 2 spot rather than the number 1 in terms of bottom of the list. But I On the flip side, well, not quite the flip side, but close, I saw a low budget feature called This Is Not a War Story. This was, I think, the directorial debut of the young lady who plays the main character. I don't remember her name offhand, but it's about war vets. And different war vets. There are vets in here from Vietnam. There are vets from the Gulf War, from Afghanistan and Iraq. And basically, the young lady in question comes to a program by and for vets where they take their old uniforms, rip them up, and turn them into paper, and then use it to write journals and whatever, which is an interesting concept. But the film starts with a young man who you come to find out is a vet riding the train and committing suicide on the train by taking too many pills in very public view and whatever. And so the whole film, there's another major character in the film who was good friends with him. So the whole film deals with issues of PTSD and suicidal thoughts and dealing with finding one's place after war, after combat, especially for those who are disillusioned with the reasons for the wars. It's a hard movie to watch, but it was good. It was very good. And so, yeah, got that one done.
Well, my last one could be a contender for 2022, but thank goodness it's already been kicked off the list.
I know where this is going.
It might still be on the list for low budget feature, but definitely it's not on my list for best picture anymore. And that is Amityville Karen. The directorial debut of Sean C. Phillips, who is the Cool Duder, is known. He's got other films coming out, and let's hope that they are good, because this one is not. Essentially, you've got a Karen, and she gets involved with these Amityville vineyards, which is a vineyard that uses, I guess, soil from Amityville in California.
As you do.
As you do. And does cursed wine and stuff, and there's a lot of killing. And the editing is horrid, and acting is horrid. And I feel like they decided that no, there were a lot of points in this film where I really do think that they were like, no, we don't have enough film, so one take. Because there's those parts where there's like a guy sitting there, and I swear, he might as well just say, line. Why not just say that while you're there, you know? I mean, obviously it's not going to be edited out. Who would do that? Who would take multiple takes? You know, I've got nothing personal against Cool Duder. I have some things personal against some of the associates in this regard, but I do not... No, this is just bad. And I have a much lower standard for bad than most when I say bad as in quality. I'm not talking bad as in a film, because there are a lot of films like American Beauty that I hate, but I say the quality is good. This is no. American Beauty is a superior film in every aspect. The only thing, it might be as watchable as American Beauty for me, but otherwise, no, terrible film, bad film. Don't watch it. If you want it for your collection, just get it and just have it just sitting there and say, hey, look, Amityville Karen. Don't watch it. It's cursed. And that's it.
Would you watch that again or Solo?
Oh, God. I'd watch Amityville Karen again. But if you were gonna ask me which film was made better, Solo. Salo was an artistic film. It was very well done, very well written, very well performed. The subject matter of Salo just so happened to be something that no one should ever have to read
Mhm.
or look at.
Mhm.
So, again, well done and well performed don't always mean good.
Mhm.
And badly performed and badly done don't always mean bad, but in this case, it does.
Yeah. All right. So why don't I end us on a high note then? Because my last two were not only well done and well performed and well directed and just generally well made, they were two of the best friggin' films of the year. And I'm kind of glad I saved them for last, but on the other hand, I'm kind of like, what took me so long? But I know what took me so long. It was actually lack of availability because they're both foreign films. I saw Pedro Almodovar's film Madres Paralelas, aka Parallel Mothers. I'm a huge fan of Almodovar, and I'm a huge fan of his muse Penelope Cruz, and they always turn in a solid production when they work together. And this was no exception. Cruz plays a professional photographer who has a meet cute with a historian who happens to be he's like a forensic historian, I think would be the term for it. And it turns out that this takes place in Spain, of course. And if you know anything at all about the Spanish Civil War, there are still ghosts in that country. And one of them, and the film dives into that idea with her great-great-grandfather had been buried in a mass grave on the outside of town. She happens to know where for various reasons that you find out if you watch the film. And when she meets this guy, she picks his brain about what can he do to help out, and he gets the ball rolling. But it also turns out that the both of them immediately have the hots for each other. They start hooking up, and before long, she finds out that she is in the family way, as it were. He is not ready for that, but she is. So she goes forward. And then at the hospital, she meets a much, much younger mother who happens to be in the same place, getting ready to give birth. And the two of them, she offers a sort of a shoulder of support for the young woman. And they hit it off and become, kind of friendly acquaintances, I guess you could say. For various reasons, the younger one ends up seeking her out later. And the story gets kind of complicated. There are some twists and turns, and I could get into spoiler territory, but I prefer not to. But suffice it to say, like I said, any film by Almodovar is automatically worth a watch. Most of them are freaking awesome films. And I really, really enjoyed Parallel Mothers. And then the last one, very last one, actually technically watched it going into the first day of July. Like this was my holdover from one month to the next.
Well, thanks to people being late anyway.
Partly for that, yes. Partly for the fact there's a 3-hour friggin' movie. Was Ryusuke Hamaguchi's adaptation of a short story by Haruki Murakami called Drive My Car, which apparently we do have it at the library. I thought we didn't, but it's because I was looking for a book called Drive My Car, but it's actually the first story in the collection Men Without Women. I didn't realize that. So so basically they took a short story and turned it into a 3-hour film.
I want to say I put one of the actresses there as a supporting actress.
Well, the one who used the sign language, if I remember correctly. Park Yu-rin, I think it is. Basically, Drive My Car follows an older character, actually probably just about the same age as Cruz's character in the other movie, who is a successful stage director, who his wife, they have a very loving relationship, or so he thinks. And in their way they do. But apparently there was an itch he didn't realize wasn't getting scratched. And early in the film, he walks in on her boffing her much younger. She is a television screenwriter, a teleplay writer, and the star of the drama she's working on and her start having a dalliance. And he walks in on them, but they don't realize it. So he knows, but they don't know he knows. But maybe she did know he knows because she tells him one day, I want to talk to you, please come home. And he's trying to avoid her, and when he comes home, she is unresponsive on the floor, and it turns out she had a cerebral hemorrhage and died from it before coming to. And so after a couple of years of him being very regretful over his loss, and they were already dealing with the loss of a child, so that was it was something that was there. But he gets called up to Hiroshima to do a workshop, a theater workshop. And it's an interesting concept. They sent out feelers all over Eastern Asia, and they end up, when they cast it, they end up having a cast with a Japanese dude who speaks no other languages, a girl from China who's fluent in Mandarin and English, a Korean who can't speak but's fluent in Korean Sign Language, and most of the others are either fluent in Japanese or English. But there is weird that there's that. It kind of put me in mind of Wong Kar-wai's 2046, because in that movie he had actors acting in Japanese, Chinese, and Korean, and they were just acting off each other in their own languages. And that's kind of an interesting concept there. And it was interesting seeing him put that into play in production of a play that he has done many times before, Uncle Vanya. And it's a really well-made movie, really gorgeous. The title comes from the fact that he is told in no uncertain terms, you are not allowed to drive while you're here for insurance reasons. So they hire a young lady to drive for him.
She's also really good.
She is also, well, all the acting, uniformly, the acting was excellent. And it was, it turns out the young guy who had been his wife's paramour is also part of this production, and that leads to some drama, but not necessarily in the way you would think it would. I am a huge fan of Haruki Murakami. I've read several of his works. I really want now to find this story and read it. But the movie is great, and I can't wait for Criterion to put it out this month. I will be getting that. Absolutely.
Oh, it's already ordered. It's just it's when it'll come. It'll come too late to really get a good vote in on it, which is why I have to figure out another way to capture it.
Right.
But very good film. All right. Well, with that being said, is that everything?
That is everything.
Well, that was June. Well, hope you enjoyed this. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Bye.